Let's see what we've got coming up. All right, I'm looking at the homework screen, and we're going, chapter 1 was due last Friday. Chapter 2 is due tomorrow. All right, and you have an exam after chapter 2. The exam is due the 19th. And if you look at the window, the exam is open from the 15th through the 19th. So as usual, I say, don't wait till the last minute. Try to get it done a day or two earlier. All right, now before we get into the chapter 2, let's look at the homework problems in advance to get an idea of the topics that will be covered. Right, so we're just going to look at the problems. We're not going to do them yet. We're just going to look at them to see what the topics are, because then you know when you're what to really pay close attention to. Here's a problem where they're asking you to calculate the predetermined overhead rate and determine the amount of applied overhead of 18,100 actual hours are worked. All right, so how do we calculate the predetermined rate? How do we apply overhead, right? Those are that problem. And the next one is somewhat similar. Compute the predetermined rate, apply the rate, and determine whether the rate or the amount of applied overhead is actually over or under applied. All right, so these are all the topics that we're going to have to pay attention to as we go through this. Okay, just letting people in still. Okay, so those are the first two problems. You can see they're somewhat related. And then we have to calculate the amount of direct materials that's used, the applied overhead, the total manufacturing cost. Now, some of these are things that we've already discussed in the prior chapter, right? So those terms should be somewhat familiar to you. But here's something new. Compute the cost of goods manufactured. So we're going to take a look at that. That's an important topic. And then compute cost of goods sold. Now, cost of goods sold is something that you are somewhat familiar with, but in the context of a manufacturing company, it's something that's new to you, right? Because we haven't seen that in that context yet. And what else do we have? Last problem. Somewhat similar. Prepare a cost of goods manufactured report. So we're going to learn again how to calculate cost of goods manufactured, and prepare a partial income statement up to gross profit. That's what they normally ask you to do. All right, so let's go back to Blackboard, and now let's take a look at the exam. Again, your exam will have different numbers, but the problem should be similar. So let's take a look at the exam. We can see that the exam, it says it's 5 questions, but a lot of times the questions are in parts. So it may not really be 5 separate questions. But here's an example. They want you to calculate direct material, direct labor, and overhead. The total manufacturing cost, which just you add the first 3. the prime cost, the conversion cost. Now, these are all things we did in the last chapter, right? We talked about those. The period cost, right? So that's, I think we did 2 problems at least in the last chapter like that. Okay, now here, overhead applied, the total cost of this job number, right? And, you know, what would the total cost be? It would be the materials plus the labor plus the overhead. So we have to figure out how to apply the overhead. They're telling you the rate is $12 an hour based on direct labor hours. How many direct labor hours were there? 51. 51 times 12. That's the applied overhead. Problem 3, calculate the overhead rate. Apply the overhead. Was it over or under applied, right? And again, the term may not mean anything to you yet. And what do you do with the over or under applied overhead? It goes against cost of goods sold. Sometimes it's increased, sometimes it's decreased. But again, we'll see that later today. Okay, what do they want here? Calculate the overhead rate, calculate the cost of goods manufactured, calculate the over or under applied overhead, calculate the adjusted cost of goods sold, right? The adjusted cost of goods sold will include this over or under applied overhead. And then the last problem, journal entries. Uh-oh, journal entries for manufacturing. Okay. All right, so let's now take a look at this video. It's about a half hour. So hello again. We continue our accounting journey. And we're going to start chapter 2 today. And we defined a lot of terminology and we discussed some concepts that are kind of unique to manufacturing accounting, the flow of cost through the system, through the accounting system. So we're going to continue with that today. And notice the name of this chapter is called Job Order Costing. Our goal here is to keep track of the job, direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overhead by job. Now imagine if you were a construction contractor, for example, and you did home improvements. That was your business. Each customer is a... All right, so we saw how to answer the homework, and here's the copy, right, which is everything that was done in the videos, right? So you get an idea how to do that. All right, now there's another problem that isn't on the videos. It was the last one. And if we take a look at that, it had to do with journal entries. Let's take a look at that. Now, the best place to look for this You know, class, sometimes I think I'm losing my mind. I could have sworn I saw a journal entry problem earlier. Let's take a look. Oh. Okay, I apologize. I thought I saw something before that's not there. Okay. Um, great. I'm glad it's not there. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm glad it's not there. All right, but I could have sworn I saw it there before. Oh well, whatever. So now you know your homework's due tomorrow, and it looks like some of you are into it, and a number of you haven't started yet. So don't wait. And are there any questions? I mean, I know it's always a mouthful. You know, we're trying to do 2 days worth of class in one day in this class, right? Because it's hybrid. That's why it's good that a lot of you seem to be getting started on your work early. That is the best way to go about doing this. Any questions?
No questions.
No questions? Everything makes sense to you, or at least you know where to get your information from? All right. Well, if there are no questions, you know, take whatever time we have left and get into your work. And, you know, again, if there's any problems, email me. I'll try to get right back to you. Don't forget your exam is also due soon, right? What did we say the exam was due? Between the 15th and the 19th, right? The due date is actually the 19th, but you can start on the 15th. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's where I saw the question.
Yeah, it was the last question of the
Okay.
exam.
Okay. All right. See, I haven't totally lost my mind, just a little bit. Okay. So here's a question where you have to make journal entries. And in the video, I think I said you don't have to make journal entries. I want to see something here if I can. Okay. No one has started yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that last question. I don't know why it's there. So if there's no further questions, then I'll see you next week. Just don't forget your due dates, etc. Okay? See you next week.